Separate from the legal penalties that can apply if governance is not done properly, it is the single most important driver behind relative performance that plans will see. Without proper governance, it's impossible to have the investment goals, objectives, constraints, and processes by which an investment program is going to be implemented communicated to all of the relevant parties. Well, there are two principal issues at work here. The first is that the board or the investment committee that delegates some degree of fiduciary responsibility to a third party will no longer be in the loop about what that third party is doing. Stated differently, the left hand might not know what the right hand is doing, and that's an issue because as fiduciaries, boards and investment committees are still responsible for understanding what's going on in the total portfolio. A second and related issue is that a lot of boards and investment committees come equipped with their own sense of history of where the investment program has been in the past, as well as a series of relationships that they may have with outside parties. We don't want to dilute that. In fact, that's vital to the success of an investment program. So the trick is to really be able to keep the investment committee and boards in the loop if they do some degree of discretionary management, and also make sure that any knowledge that they have is imparted onto the third party who's doing that work. Absolutely. It can do a few things. First, it can help boards and investment committees better focus on where they have the highest and best value added for the investment program. That typically involves setting asset allocation, long-term goals and objectives, and processes by which they will be evaluated over time. All too often, we find that boards and investment committees get distracted away from these important duties by focusing instead on things like manager selection and more bottom-up issues. And while these issues are not trivial, they tend not to add near as much value as those top-down decisions that I just mentioned. It absolutely does. Every year there are new asset classes, techniques, and issues for boards and investment committees to stay on top of. At the same time, there are almost always resource constraints and definitely time constraints. By delegating some of this day-to-day responsibility to a third party, the boards can typically then better focus on forests and much less on trees. Well, there are a few things. First off, we have access to very, very good technology which monitors the entire investment portfolio, as well as all of the investment decisions that we've made on our clients' behalf. We very proactively communicate these things to our clients so that they're fully in the know and are able to satisfy their own fiduciary responsibilities. The other thing that we bring to the table is something quite innovative, and it's called a joint investment committee. And this is where we can let our clients sit on the oversight structure that we set up for each one of our discretionary accounts. Each client will have within Segal Rogercasey a dedicated committee, and that committee is responsible for all of the decisions made for that client. However, when the client sits in that committee, he can see what is going on within the deliberation process, understand the context in which decisions are made, and report those decisions back to their own board or investment committee. Well, there are two things really. The first is that we can help boards and investment committees overcome some of the behavioral biases that frankly all boards and investment committees come with. A big problem is groupthink. And by having a third party such as Segal Rogercasey as part of the mix, we can add another independent voice into how we think the portfolio should actually be managed over time. The second issue, and this is a very critical one, is that we can help deal with time horizon mismatches in between when a board or investment committee meets versus when decisions actually need to be made. A lot of boards and committees will only meet 4, maybe 12 times a year, and there can be a lot of things that happen both in the markets as well as the portfolio during those in-between periods. By having somebody like Segal Rogercasey oversee the portfolio on a daily basis, we can better manage those time horizon issues. Well, over the last several years, there's been a really strong movement on the part of endowments, foundations, corporate pension plans, multi-employer pension plans, and even high net worth individuals to delegate some degree of decision-making to a third party like Segal Rogercasey. We see the movement accelerating, and for all the reasons we mentioned earlier. It helps rationalize limited resources, it helps effect more timely and appropriate decision-making, and as much as anything, it really helps reduce cost. It levers our resources, it allows our clients to benefit from our funds and other tools that we can bring to the table, and usually in a much more cost-efficient manner.